Ramón Urías does it again with a 2-run go-ahead homer in the 8th inning on Tuesday night to lead the Orioles to a 5-3 victory over the Rays. I'll recap that, plus take a look at the Orioles trade candidates. Who is the most likely Oriole to be dealt at next week's deadline? That's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Wednesday, July 27th, 2022, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we start with another Orioles victory, O's 5 and Rays 3, as Ramón Urías plays hero again to get the Orioles back over 500 and to jump the O's into 4th place in the American League East in late July. Plus, I'll take a look at the Orioles trade candidates. I figure there's 10 players on this Orioles active roster that could theoretically be traded. So I'll rank those 10 from 10 to 1, from least to most likely to be traded by Tuesday's trade deadline. So that's all coming up on this episode of the pod. But first, just got to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. Locked On Orioles, free and available on all podcast listening platforms. New episodes 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. If you like the pod, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast. Leave a 5-star rating and a review if you can. Tell your friends about the podcast. Tell your family members, anyone who likes the Orioles, tell them to check out Locked On Orioles, and specifically check out the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. Hit that red subscribe button, like and comment on the videos as well. It all helps me out to bring you continuous Orioles coverage here on the page. And again, I thank you, the listener, for making it all happen and making Locked On Orioles your first listen of the day. And for your first listen today, let's start with another fun Orioles win. Orioles 5, Rays 3 in Game 2 of a 4-game series at Oriole Park at Camden Yards on Tuesday night. The O's with the victory, getting back over 500 at 49 and 48 on the season. And more importantly, now as I record this, the Guardians lead the Red Sox by 5 late in the game. Assuming Cleveland holds on to that win, the Baltimore Orioles will jump the Boston Red Sox into 4th place, sole possession of 4th place in the AL East. They have not been above 5th place in the division this late in a season since 2017. I mean, it's baby steps, but it's still pretty awesome baby steps at that. But I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' 5-3 victory over the Rays. And the first thing you need to know is that the Orioles rallied with that big inning once again to win the ball game. And this time, it was a little more dramatic with a 3-run 8th inning to go ahead 5-3 and go on to win it. And really, it all started with certainly a puzzling decision by Rays manager Kevin Cash. Shane McClanahan was rolling in this game. The presumed, at this point, 2022 AL Cy Young Award winner, the guy who started the All-Star game last week, was dominating. He was through 7 innings. He allowed just 2 hits. Now, both had been solo home runs, so it was 2 runs, but he had struck out 7. He had walked just 1, and he was at just 81 pitches through 7 innings, and he hadn't given up a hit since the Anthony Santander solo homer in the 4th made it a 3-2 game. And at 81 pitches, I could not believe that Kevin Cash turned things over to his bullpen. Now, obviously, the Rays bullpen, despite their injuries, they've been great all year. And he brings in a guy in Colin Poche who has given the Orioles fits for years. But the O's took that advantage and said, we can't hit McClanahan, but we think we can hit these other guys. And what do? Well, Adley Rutschman runs the count full and then laces a single into left field for a leadoff hit. And then up comes Ramón Urías, gets behind 0-2, and then a fastball from Poche catches just a little too much of the plate. And Ramón Urías just destroys this thing over the big wall in left field, 104.2 miles per hour off the bat, 424 feet to left field for the go-ahead 2-run homer that put the O's up 4-3. But the big thing there was they were not done. Then Jorge Mateo came up after a Rougned Odor pop-up. He doubled, stole 3rd. Cedric Mullins walks, steals 2nd. Trey Mancini comes through with a sac fly to make it 5-3, and they get that extra tack-on run as well. Just another great big inning for the Orioles, and what a rally it was. And I was in the ballpark on Tuesday night, took in my first Orioles win of the season. And, it wasn't the biggest crowd for a Tuesday night against the Rays, but the energy was huge in that 8th inning, in that comeback. And it was just awesome to see. Second thing you need to know from this one is that on the pitching side for the Orioles, Spencer Watkins was certainly not dominant in any stretch, but he somehow grinded out one that was pretty close to a quality start. Spencer Watkins on Tuesday night goes 5 1/3 innings, allowing 3 runs on a career-high 10 hits, with 4 strikeouts, no walks, and 1 home run allowed. He threw 88 pitches. His ERA is at 4.03 on the season. Now, Spencer Watkins, in one sense, got lit up in this game. 13 hard hit balls against Watkins in 5 1/3 innings. Let me tell you that again. 13 hard hit balls in 5 1/3 innings. That is any ball off the bat of 95 miles per hour or more in terms of its exit velocity. You don't give up just 3 runs on 13 hard hit balls, unless, of course, you're Spencer Watkins. He got out of some jams. He got some help from his defense, got some help from some bad Rays base running at times, and scattered those 10 hits enough to get out of there with just the 3 runs allowed. I mean, he pitched into the 6th inning. He had a chance to get a quality start out of this game when, Spencer Watkins' peripherals are not good. The stuff isn't great. He somehow grinded through games this year. And this might have been his best job of grinding through games because he did not have his best stuff. He was getting hit hard and somehow got the Orioles 16 outs and kept them in the game. So kudos to him. Now, he did get 7 whiffs on that cutter of his 10 total whiffs, so that's a good number. The cutter was rolling. The curveball looked okay. When he threw that 4-seamer, that thing was getting smashed in this game. So we'll see what he does moving forward, but the velocity was down across the board for Watkins, which is a little concerning, but at the end of the day, he did enough against Shane McClanahan to help the Orioles win the ballgame. Third thing you need to know from this one is that behind Spencer Watkins, well, we got to shout out to Joey Krehbiel, because Joey Krehbiel might have been the biggest reason why the O's had a chance to come back in this game. He enters the game for Watkins with a runner on first and 1 out in the 6th, with the Orioles trailing 3-2, and just goes to work. Krehbiel works 2 1/3 scoreless innings out of the bullpen, allowing just 1 hit, 1 walk, and striking out 2. He threw 40 pitches as he just rolled through this Rays lineup, getting 7 huge outs for the Orioles. And, the stuff was just working for Krehbiel. Got 7 whiffs, fastball, cutter, changeup, all looked good on the night. And here's the big thing, it wasn't just big in a vacuum to get those 7 outs. But when you think about what the Orioles bullpen had to do on Monday night, remember, Austin Voth on Monday night threw only 3 innings as the Orioles starter. So the O's bullpen, they pulled it together and threw 6 shutout innings to help the O's win that game 5-1 on Monday. But pretty much everyone pitched out of the Oriole bullpen on Monday. The only 3 guys they did not use were Joey Krehbiel, Keegan Akin, and Jorge Lopez. And those were the 3 guys who pitched out of the Oriole bullpen on Tuesday night. But if Krehbiel couldn't get 7 outs, the O's would have had to have Keegan Akin go through more of the order, and he struggled a little bit over the last couple of outings. That could have been bad, but Krehbiel allowed Akin to just have to face 1 batter. He comes in with 2 outs in the 8th, strikes out Roman Quinn. The Orioles take the lead, and in comes Jorge Lopez, who did allow a leadoff infield single, but gets 3 straight ground balls and gets his 18th save to give the Orioles the win. So shout out to the bullpen, but especially to Joey Krehbiel. Fourth thing you need to know from this one is that, well, the Oriole offense, even before Ramón Urías hit the big home run, did rely on the long ball in this one. And it started on the first pitch of the game from Shane McClanahan. Cedric Mullins deposits one into the flag court in right field on the very first pitch to give the Orioles a 1-0 lead. And Ryan Mountcastle, 2 batters later, almost had another homer had he not been robbed by Luke Raley of a home run out in right field just to the left of the wall by that short wall out there. But Cedric Mullins, had a good view, had some really good seats on Tuesday night, had a great view of that home run, 98 miles per hour off the bat, 368 feet. He crushed that first pitch. And then speaking of crushing things, Anthony Santander got himself a home run as well. Solo shot launched into the bullpen in the 4th inning, 106.4 miles per hour off the bat, 399 feet it traveled for Santander, again with a team lead in home runs, gets another one. But those were the only 2 hits the Orioles had off of Shane McClanahan. It was just nice that they happened to be home runs, and that helped keep the Orioles in this game. And, of course, the big home run then comes from Urías to give the O's the lead in the 8th inning. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from this Orioles 5-1 victory over the Rays on Tuesday night at Camden Yards is that, Trey Mancini was still in the Oriole lineup, which is good, as trade rumors swirl. He started at first base, batting second. Now, he didn't get a hit, and an 0 for 3 on the night pushes his streak to 0 for his last 25. But the one positive is he had 2 hard hit balls, including a rocket of a sac fly out to right center field in the 8th that extended the lead to 5-3. He launched that baseball. Luke Raley, like that guy, made another great play to keep it to a sac fly instead of what it should have been, which was a 2-run double that would have really put the game away. But he hit that ball 100 miles per hour off the bat, traveled 377 feet, expected batting average of 500, and it ends up as a sac fly for Trey. He swung the bat better Tuesday night than he has recently, and hopefully that leads to, some better contact, some more hits, and maybe an extension in an Oriole uniform, and hopefully we do not see a trade. But speaking of trades, it looks like the Orioles are going to make one or two, whether it be adding or probably subtracting some guys from this roster. So coming up next, I wanted to take a look at the 10 players who I think could theoretically be traded by Tuesday's deadline. And I power ranked them 10 through 1, from least likely to most likely to be traded by next week. And that ranking is coming up next. But first, got to tell you about BlueNile.com, because whether you're ready to pop the question or you're just celebrating a milestone moment, you can get that perfect piece of jewelry at BlueNile.com. They've got the modern convenience of online shopping for jewelry, and there's simple online tools to let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. You can truly build the engagement ring of her dreams. And if you have questions or you have trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. So make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on now is the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale. Save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. Well, we will be talking trade deadline all week here on the podcast, leading up to the deadline, which is now 6 days away. It's next Tuesday, August 2nd. And again, as always, thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first listen every day. But with the MLB trade deadline on August 2nd, Locked On MLB has all the breakdowns. Locked On Orioles, of course, we will have rapid reactions to any move that the Orioles make. So subscribe now to your favorite Locked On Orioles on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get notified when each episode premieres. And remember, trade deadline content across the network coming up this week. And that continues right here today, because as we sit here, the Orioles have not made a trade deadline move yet, but it feels like the O's are at least going to be somewhat active at the deadline. So wanted to take a look at kind of the seller side of the Orioles equation, because as we stand, the Orioles are still in a playoff race right now. They are still within striking distance of the AL wildcard now with the 3 wildcard teams. And for the Orioles, I don't think they're going to be tear it down sellers. I don't think they're going to be all in buyers. They could be somewhere in the middle. But today I wanted to focus on the selling side of things and take a look at which Orioles on the current 26-man active roster are most likely to be traded. So first we'll start with a group of guys who just aren't going to be dealt from this roster. And then we'll look at the 10 most likely guys on the roster to be traded, and I'll power rank them 10-1 from least to most likely to be dealt by Tuesday's trade deadline. So let's start with just the guys who aren't going to be dealt. On the current 26-man active roster, I figure there's 16 of these guys that just are not going to be traded. There's a first group where these guys just don't have much value to other teams. Maybe if they were packaged in a deal, they could be dealt. But essentially, Robinson Chirinos, Tyler Nevin, Ryan McKenna, Spencer Watkins, Austin Voth, and Dean Kramer. I put into that list where, yeah, they're valuable to the Orioles. They're all on a major league roster of a team that's competing for a playoff spot. But I don't see them being dealt for anything unless they're packaged in a different deal. So you have, those 6 guys. And then I felt like there were 10 guys in another category where it's, another team would want these guys, but there's just no way at this point the Orioles are trading them unless, for a couple of them, they would maybe be put in a package where they're not the number one piece in the deal. But Adley Rutschman for obvious reasons. Ramón Urías, he's been too good. Ryan Mountcastle for obvious reasons. Austin Hayes, I don't think there's going to be any deals on the table there. Taron Vavra just getting called up. I think the O's are holding on to him. Tyler Wells has just been too important to the Orioles rotation. Felix Bautista, I know he's come up in rumors, but he's not a free agent until 2027. And he's your future closer. You hold on to him. Nick Vespi as well, just getting called up and pitching well. Yeah, maybe a team would want Brian Baker, but I think, he's a rookie. You keep him around for as long as you can. And Jorge Mateo, who, other teams could certainly use in a pinch runner role. But if he's still going to be the starting shortstop for the Orioles for a little while, he's much more valuable to the Orioles right now than he is to other teams. So they would hold on to him as well. So that leaves 10 players on the current active 26-player roster that I think do have at least an outside shot of being dealt by Tuesday's trade deadline. So wanted to do a power ranking, 10 through 1, 10 being the least and 1 being most likely to be dealt by Tuesday's deadline. So let's jump right into it. Number 10, I have Cedric Mullins. Now, if this were last year or this were even last offseason, he would be a little bit higher on this list. Now, Mullins is signed through 2025, and he hits arbitration next season. So he will start making, real money in the big leagues starting next year. Now, he has coming into play on Tuesday right down the middle, a 100 WRC plus. That means, according to that statistic, he's been exactly a league average hitter so far this year for the Orioles. Now, he's helped them in a lot of other ways, and he has 1.9 WAR according to Fangraphs because he's been so good defensively and so good on the base paths as well. But he hasn't been the hitter he was last year. He was a 6 WAR player last year. He had a 136 WRC plus last year. If the Orioles really didn't see Cedric Mullins as a, maybe not a cornerstone, but a solid to big piece of their future winning teams, they would have traded him when his value was the highest last offseason. Now, he's still a valuable player, but his value is certainly lower now than it was in the offseason or it even was at last year's trade deadline. So because of those things, I think teams could certainly be calling the Orioles about Cedric Mullins, maybe trying to buy a little lower on him. But it does not make sense for the O's to deal him now or ever, frankly. I think he's a piece of this Orioles team moving forward. Number 9 on this list, I have Joey Krehbiel. I thought about putting him in the list with Bautista, Vespi, and Baker and just kind of saying there's no way he gets traded. But Krehbiel is a little bit different from those guys. Just that he did come from the Rays, and he hasn't played as big a role in the Oriole bullpen. And, he's kind of a tweener in where I think he could be potentially replaceable if the Orioles got rid of him. Krehbiel with a 2.62 ERA this season. He has, pitched in a lot of different spots, everything from the lowest to the highest leverage all year. Now, he is signed through 2027, not arbitration eligible until the 2025 season. So the O's have a lot of control over Joey Krehbiel. But if someone came in and were desperate for a bullpen piece, I could see the O's maybe moving him. Probably not likely, though. He also has options, too. He's a very good player for the O's to have in the bullpen. At number 8, I put Keegan Akin. I would not rule out a Keegan Akin trade at this deadline. He's been a nice swing man for the Orioles. He's got a 2.45 ERA on the season pitching out of the bullpen. But lately, it hasn't been great. The month of July, the stats have been much worse than we saw early in the season from Akin. And the other thing with Keegan Akin, he still has an option remaining. He's signed through 2026. The Orioles still have a lot of control of him. And I know he, struggled as a starter and then really, has been great for the O's at times in this relief role. But at the end of the day, he's one of those guys who's also probably more valuable to the Orioles than he would be to another team. And I do think the O's certainly haven't ruled out making him a starter again. Now, obviously, it's gone much better out of the bullpen. But there's a chance he's still a starter down the road for the Orioles. And I think they want to hold on to him for that case as well. Now, if someone came and blew you out of the water in a Keegan Akin trade, they might do it. But I just don't see with those factors him being dealt. But I could see some interest in him just because of the innings he can eat and what he's done to that success out of the bullpen this year and just all the strikes he's throwing, the swinging strikes he's getting on his fastball. There's underlying metrics that make him attractive to other teams. Maybe not this year, though. Number 7 on the list, I would say the top 7 specifically, I wouldn't be shocked if they got dealt Tuesday. I think there's a top 10 who could be traded, and I think the top 7 here is where it would not shock me if they were dealt. Number 7, I put Rougned Odor. Obviously on one hand, he's an upcoming free agent. So if the Orioles dealt him, it would make the most sense. That's what most guys that are traded at the deadline are upcoming free agents. He's also a second baseman, and, with Terrin Vavra coming up on Tuesday to play some second base, you have Ramón Urías who plays that position, and, you're waiting hopefully soon on Jordan Westburg and Gunnar Henderson to come to the big leagues, and you even have Ryland Bannon down there as well. Rougned Odor is blocking guys, not a lot, but a little bit at this point. But on the other side, really hasn't been that good at the plate. He's got an 80 WRC plus. I mean, he's basically, at the end of the day, doing kind of what he did with the Yankees offensively last year. Now, he certainly brings the vibes to the Orioles dugout, and I would say he's made the spectacular play, sometimes not the easy play. He's been certainly interesting to watch defensively at second, but that's the only position he plays is second base. And he's only 28, which is still crazy to me that he's only 28. But he's not exactly producing so much. So for me, yeah, if a team really went after Rougned Odor, they had an injury at second base and they got desperate, I think the O's would deal him. But almost just with the clubhouse and what he's doing with these young guys, he's one of those other guys who's just probably more valuable to the Orioles than he is to another team at this point, which makes me think they don't deal him. But because he's an upcoming free agent, I wouldn't be shocked if a move was made. Then we go to number 6. That is Cionel Perez. Now, Perez, if the Orioles made him available at all, would be a very, very attractive relief option for a lot of contending teams. First of all, he's a lefty who gets lefties and righties out. That is something huge to have in a bullpen. And not only that, he's a lefty who's throwing 96, 97 with a wipeout slider from the left side with good command. And that had been his issue with Houston and Cincinnati. Good stuff, bad command. Now it's good stuff, good command, and that has turned into a 1.35 ERA for Cionel Perez heading into play on Tuesday. Now, he's signed through 2026. He doesn't hit arbitration until the 2024 season. So again, a lot of control. That's, a factor and a theme in this Orioles bullpen. Not only are they performing well, they're all pretty young and they're all in their contract for a long time. And Perez is one of those guys. He's also really brought the energy to this Orioles team. But I could see a team making an offer that blows Mike Elias away enough to deal Cionel Perez. I think, Elias sees a spot for Nick Vespi to try and fill in maybe as that top lefty if they were to give up Perez. But they're very different pitchers. Obviously, Vespi more of a slider guy, low velocity. Perez, a high velocity fastball guy and has had more success this year. So it would be interesting to see. And the O's have more righties that can kind of fill in if they trade a reliever, rather than the lefties where behind Vespi, you don't have as many options in AAA to bring up, which would make me think they'll probably have to be blown away by an offer to trade him. But someone could see those metrics and really get desperate, and it certainly could happen, a trade for Cionel Perez. But that's 10 through 6. Coming up next, get you the top 5 most likely players on the Orioles' 26-man active roster to be traded by Tuesday's trade deadline. But first, got to tell you about betonline.net, the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. Now, of course, we're in the middle of the Major League Baseball season, but got other things approaching. You can obviously get all the lines, you can check all the odds and everything for every single night of Major League Baseball, but also the NFL season is sneaking up on us. The Ravens reporting training camp on Tuesday. It's getting closer. The college football season sneaking up on us as well. And of course, every weekend there's combat sports and there's golf and esports as well. You can get everything you need to know. Injury news, lineups, odds, lines, anything at betonline.net for every league. And they've got live in-game betting as well. You can listen to podcasts. They truly have you covered. So head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today at BetOnline, where the game starts. So we're here ranking from least to most likely Orioles trade candidates for Tuesday's 2022 trade deadline. Went through so far the 16 players on the active roster who I don't think are being dealt, and numbers 10 through 6 from least to most likely of being dealt by Tuesday's deadline. Now we go to the top 5. These are all guys really who, I said the top 7, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't say I expect all 5 of these players to be dealt. I certainly don't, but it would probably even go below, less than shocked if any of these guys are dealt. But at number 5, maybe he doesn't fit the rest of these guys, but at number 5, I would put Dylan Tate. Now, Dylan Tate is a little less controllable than the rest of the relievers. Most of this bullpen is signed through 2026 or 2027. He is signed through 2025. That is still 3 more years after this season. So if a team were to acquire him, you get 3.5 years of Dylan Tate. That's still a lot of control. He is arbitration eligible starting next year, and he does have a 2.35 ERA. He's shown he can go multiple innings. He's done a lot of work at driveline over the past few off seasons, and it's gotten him better and better every year with all that work that he has put in. But I could see him being, maybe a package guy in a Trey Mancini deal for a team like the Mets that would want a reliever potentially. But the O's, you would think, would still want to hold on to him. I mean, you still have 3.5 more years of Dylan Tate, a guy who has not only been a good middle reliever, a good late inning reliever, he's filled in as the Oriole closer from time to time and done a great job. So he's, done a nice job, whether Lopez needs a break, Bautista needs a break the last couple years, whether it be Cesar Valdez or Cole Sulser needing a break or whatever it may be. Tate has filled in and done a solid job as kind of the step-in closer as well. So he's pitched in a lot of roles. That sinker, that changeup, that slider, they continue to get better. So I wouldn't trade Dylan Tate unless the team blew me away. I could see him, and I really only have him this high up on the list because he just has less years of control than the rest of the relievers. And Mike Elias has shown this since taking over as GM. He is confident that he can replace relievers in a bullpen, and he did it this year. Remember, he traded Tanner Scott and Cole Sulser to the Marlins about a week before opening day. I said on this podcast I didn't think the Orioles bullpen would be able to recover from that. Well, it allowed Jorge Lopez and Felix Bautista and all these guys like Perez to step up into these new roles, Joey Krehbiel, and the bullpen has been a top 5 bullpen in baseball, 3rd best ERA in the majors after that. And there's more guys coming. You look down at AAA, and you've got some guys like Cole Uvala and, even Logan Gillespie and, Rico Garcia and Denny Reyes and guys who have, pitched in the big leagues even already for the Orioles who are ready to fill into those roles if a trade is made. And the only reason why I have Tate as the highest up of these middle relievers is just because he's the only one controlled only through 2025, which is still, again, I would keep him because that's a lot of time to have a pretty good reliever. Number 4 on the list, I would say the top 4 are certainly a distinct top 4 of trade candidates for the Orioles. And number 4 is Jordan Lyles. Now, he's not exactly the ace that a team would be trading for to put into their starting rotation, but he is an innings eater. And contenders like to have that down the stretch in the back end of the rotation, at the very least, to help their bullpen rest. And, Jordan Lyles could be a free agent this offseason if a club does not pick up what is a club option. So he has a team option for $11 million for the 2023 season. So, for example, if the Orioles did hold on to him, they would have to make a decision this November if they wanted to keep him and pay him $11 million next year, or they could choose to just decline the option and make him a free agent this year. So could potentially be an upcoming free agent. Now, he's 31 years old. The sweeper that he's added this year has made him a little better. A 4.79 ERA, a 4.44 FIP. He's gone out there every 5 days. He's the innings leader on this Orioles staff. And, he was starting to pull things together. Now, I will say, I may have had him higher on this list than 4, but it's been a little bit of a struggle as we get closer and closer here to the deadline. Now, Lyles is going to pitch coming up on Thursday against the Rays. That's going to be it. That will be his final start before the deadline. So unless he turns it around and really dazzles against the Rays, it won't be the best showing right before the deadline. In his previous 2 starts, 7 2/3 innings, 9 runs on 14 hits, 7 Ks, 4 walks, and 3 homers allowed, not eating innings. That's, not a good ERA, over 10. So if those 2 starts have been better, honestly, he's probably in the top 3 on this list, but I put him at 4. All teams can use starting pitching guys who eat innings, especially a guy who, you can decline the option. If it doesn't work out, you just make him a free agent in the offseason. On the Orioles side of it, I think they love the kind of veteran leadership presence that he's brought to this Orioles pitching staff, and it's shown by the T-shirts that the Orioles wear, honoring Jordan Lyles. I think the staff kind of loves having Lyles there, but at the end of the day, he's not the best pitcher on this staff. He certainly has his limitations. He's shown that throughout his career, and if a team is willing to part with some good young players to get Jordan Lyles, I would not stop the Orioles from trading him away. Then we go to number 3 on the list, and that is Anthony Santander. Now, Santander certainly not an upcoming free agent. He is signed through 2024, so he's got 2.5 years still left on his contract. Now, he's making $3.1 million this year in arbitration. He'll be in his second year of arbitration next year, so he'll make more than that, especially with the season he's having, a 112 WRC+. He has launched up his walk rate's been a much more patient hitter, but the defense has taken a nosedive. He has not been good out there, whether he's been in right or left field. Now, a switch hitter who, it's not, crazy bad on one side. And it's all about what a team values. Do they want the power hitting Santander? Would they put him in the outfield? Do they just want him to be a DH? He's still young. You get 2.5 years of a guy who, all in all, has been a solid hitter in his career. He's had his ups and downs, and of course his injury issues, which luckily for the Orioles really haven't hampered him at all here in 2022. And on the O side, they've kind of got the contingency plan ready to go. As we've talked about on this podcast, if they do deal Santander at this deadline, it'll be an immediate promotion for Kyle Stowers. You will stick him right into right field. And the O's certainly think that long-term Kyle Stowers is a better player, especially a better hitter, and definitely a better fielder than Anthony Santander. And so I don't think they're going to lose much of a step. Maybe they lose a step for the rest of the season, but beyond that, I think they believe, and I believe, that Stowers is better than Santander. So if you can get some good young players for Santander and immediately insert Stowers in his place in the lineup, I think you do it. It's just about how much another team values a guy who, is having a 112 WRC+ and leading the team in homers, and his walk rate has really bumped up. That's all good things. But do you really trust him in the outfield, especially in a pennant race? How much do you value the 2.5 years of control versus is he just a DH? It'll be interesting to see that, but I think the Orioles would certainly be taking calls on Santander. Number 2 on this list, I'm going to go with Jorge Lopez. Of course, the Oriole closer who has had a resurgent year out of the bullpen. He is signed through 2024, so you would get 2.5 years of him if you traded for him. He's making $1.5 million this year in his first year of arbitration. He's got a 1.59 ERA, 17 saves. But you do have to remember, this is really his first good season. He had struggled as a starter coming into this year. The Orioles finally move him full-time to the bullpen here in spring training, and he has dazzled. Just had that one little blip in Minnesota, and other than that, he's been a dominant closer for the Orioles. And basically any team with playoff aspirations wants to add a reliever and would love to add a reliever right now as good as Jorge Lopez. But all the questions around Lopez are, what is his true value really? Because you put his season as a reliever in a vacuum, he's got big value. You add in 2.5 years of control, he's got huge value. But when you bring the whole picture together and say, well, he's always been a starter and a bad starter, we don't have any data beyond this season to show that he's been a good reliever, and, he is, just about 30 years old, that drops the value a little bit. So the question is, would he be paired with a guy like a Trey Mancini, which we talked about with Ryan Finkelstein of Locked On Mets on Tuesday's episode. Make sure to go check that out. But for Jorge Lopez, if the Orioles were to deal him, they could immediately slot Felix Bautista into the closer role. He's been great all season. I think he, either way, is the closer of the future for the Orioles. And you'd have relievers in AAA who could kind of backfill that bullpen as everybody moves up a rung in, their role moving forward if they do trade Lopez. I don't know if I'd trade him now because with how well he's pitching and 2.5 years left, but if Mike Elias is doing what he has done recently, which is trying to maximize value on relievers, I don't think Jorge Lopez's value is ever going to be higher than it is right at this moment. Again, I don't know if I would trade him, but it's fairly likely because I think a lot of teams are calling on Jorge Lopez, and it certainly could get done. And then, unfortunately, I hate to do it, I hate to say it, but I think number 1 on this list, most likely Oriole to be traded by the deadline, is Trey Mancini. And I've said it on this pod multiple times, did a whole episode about it a couple weeks back. I do not think the Orioles should trade Trey Mancini. Now, he's an upcoming free agent. I know they, agreed to a mutual option for 2023, but as we all know, it's been said by both parties, especially Trey, that option is going to be declined. So he is a free agent after this season. And the Orioles have not gone into extension talk, so I get it. He's not going to be an Oriole after this year. I get the argument, hey, if you're not going to bring him back, at least get something for him. But this is not an Orioles team that's 20 games out of the playoffs. This is an Orioles team that's 4 games out of the playoffs, playing a really good baseball right now. Just clinched back-to-back winning months. Trey Mancini, the heart and soul of this team, the heart and soul of Orioles fans. And to add to that, even though he's in a little slump right now, he's got a 113 WRC+. He's been a big part of this lineup all year. And it's the whole argument I've laid out about how much is he worth on the other end. You know, he's really just a first baseman / DH. Yeah, he can, quote, play the outfield, but not well. And he's an upcoming free agent. Those upcoming free agent first base DH types don't usually command a lot in terms of return on the trade market. So for the Orioles, unless you're packaging Trey with a Jorge Lopez, like we talked about on yesterday's episode, it's probably not worth it, I don't think. But the O's are going to get calls on Mancini because teams are looking for hitters, especially with the universal DH now. It gives him more of a market here at this deadline. And with the O's apparently not willing to extend him, I think Mike Elias is going to want to trade him. And with him being an upcoming free agent, that's why I put him at number 1 over Jorge Lopez. Now, if I had to guess, I think my official guess would be Trey Mancini is dealt. And I think Jorge Lopez is dealt. I think that's my guess. I think the Orioles trade 2 of these guys, my top 2 on the list, and I think they keep everybody else. I think Santander maybe 50-50. I'm going to say they don't trade him, but maybe this offseason they do deal him. But that's my power rankings, 10 through 1 of the most likely Orioles to be traded. I hope they don't break up the team. I hope they add to the team. This is fun, but I think somebody, unfortunately, is going to get dealt moving forward. And if someone is dealt, we will have all the coverage for you of the trade right here on the Locked On Orioles podcast. So make sure to join us back here tomorrow for our Thursday episode of the pod. If there is a trade, we'll of course break it down. And if not, we'll continue to talk about what could happen surrounding the trade deadline for the Orioles and maybe what they could do in terms of being buyers. But that'll come up on tomorrow's episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.